Tonight, the president orders the National Guard into Los Angeles to squash immigration protests. A plane goes down in Tennessee with more than a dozen people on board, and severe weather turns deadly in the south. We begin in Los Angeles, where the National Guard arrived overnight following days of clashes over ICE deportations. In response to some protesters throwing objects at officers, law enforcement is using flashbang grenades. Supplies are being flown in by Black Hawk helicopters. California Governor Gavin Newsom claims the president wants to create a spectacle. Matt Gutman reports from the scene as more clashes erupt, and a tense standoff in New York results in several arrests. We have reports from both cities tonight. Next, the breaking news from Tennessee. A skydiving plane crashed near an airport. 20 people on board with multiple injuries reported. Some of the injured had to be airlifted to the hospital. What we're learning at this hour. More than 40 million Americans are facing a severe weather threat. Our weather team is tracking the storms from Texas into the Carolinas. Also tonight, a chilling assassination attempt. A presidential candidate is shot in Colombia. Late word on his condition as a 15-year-old suspect is now under arrest. The war in Ukraine. Martha Raddatz takes us inside a secret factory where drones costing hundreds were built to destroy Russian bombers worth billions. Her exclusive interview with Ukraine's president and what he says he wants from Donald Trump. A crucial week ahead for Sean Diddy Combs, charged with sex trafficking and racketeering. Why his lawyers are calling for a mistrial again. Urgent rescue. Flames seen shooting from a boat packed with more than 20 people, while the operator is now facing charges. A thriller at the French Open. Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner battling for 5.5 hours for the title, plus the countdown to Game 2 of the NBA Finals. Can the Indiana Pacers steal another on the road in Oklahoma City? And rebirth in America. He was once left for dead after a devastating injury. Now this high school graduate is rewriting his story and taking on new challenges.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this Sunday. I'm Lindsay Davis. We begin tonight with fast-moving developments in Los Angeles. President Trump deploying 2,000 National Guard members after violence and chaos erupts during immigration protests. Outside a federal building just moments ago, police declared it an unlawful assembly. Those troops descending on the streets of L.A. Governor Gavin Newsom is blasting the move, calling it, quote, purposefully inflammatory and an alarming abuse of power. Nearly a dozen arrests overnight as some protesters tossed objects at officers, police using tear gas and flashbang grenades to disperse the crowd. Today, protesters were back out on the streets for the third consecutive day, some marching in downtown L.A. And police and protesters also squaring off here in New York City. Tonight, the Trump administration says California officials could face federal charges over their response. ABC's Matt Gutman is in Los Angeles and leads us off.
Tonight, hundreds of National Guard troops are deployed on the streets of Los Angeles. A convoy of heavily armed and camouflaged troops arriving overnight, establishing staging areas at downtown federal facilities. President Trump calling up 2,000 members of the National Guard in an effort to stamp out clashes that broke out over the weekend between law enforcement and demonstrators protesting ICE deportations. Tensions boiling over after immigration authorities conducted a series of sweeps in recent days, arresting more than 100 immigrants in Los Angeles over the course of last week. Dozens of demonstrators arrested since the clashes broke out Friday. Officers in riot gear using tear gas and flashbangs to disperse protesters, some of whom hurled projectiles. And in an extraordinary scene Saturday afternoon, a Black Hawk helicopter landing in the parking lot of a Homeland Security office. Agents unloading supplies for law enforcement. And we were there this evening as that standoff continued outside a federal facility in downtown Los Angeles. This is one of the tear gas canisters that was just deployed against some of the couple of hundred people here. And on this side, there are about 100 federal law enforcement, California National Guard. The president bypassing California's governor, authorizing the troop deployment for 60 days late Saturday, saying in a memo the protests constitute a form of rebellion against the United States. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth adding on social media that the administration is also considering mobilizing active duty Marines if the clashes continue, an idea the president did not rule out late today.
What is the bar for sending Marines?
The bar is what I think it is. I mean, if we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order.
Local officials blasting the White House in response. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass writing, deploying federalized troops on the heels of these raids is a chaotic escalation. And California Governor Gavin Newsom calling the troop deployment purposefully inflammatory, adding the idea of deploying active duty Marines on U.S. soil is deranged. Today, Trump's allies in Washington defending the president's decision.
Do you have any problem or any concerns about the president sending in the National Guard to a place where local authorities say that they're not needed and could be harmful?
I have no concern about that at all. I think the president did exactly what he needed to do.
President Trump is putting the safety of the communities that are being impacted by these riots and by these protests that have turned violent. And he's putting the safety of our law enforcement officers first.
Lindsay, you can see the intensity of what has happened here in downtown L.A. Police arresting this man. He was walking on stilts. They've taken him down. There are projectiles being thrown. You can hear flashbangs, water, and all over there are these flashbang canisters that have been strewn here on the street. Police continue to try to push the crowd back beyond these federal buildings. Now, a reminder that this is the first time since 1965 that a governor has been bypassed in the deployment of National Guard. That's in the federal building just to my left. So we're seeing something that hasn't happened in quite some time here in downtown Los Angeles, Lindsay.
Still an active situation there, Matt. Thank you. Here in New York City, nearly 24 people were taken into custody. What started as a protest to ICE deportation operations turned into a standoff with demonstrators coming face to face with NYPD officers. Many were led away in zip ties. Tonight, 9 of the 22 people taken into custody yesterday are facing charges. Now to that late-breaking news. A skydiving plane with 20 people on board crashed about 60 miles south of Nashville. Multiple injuries are reported, and some had to be airlifted to a local hospital. One witness says it happened shortly after takeoff. Here's ABC's Faith Abube.
Tonight, multiple people airlifted to the hospital after the skydiving plane crashed 60 miles south of Nashville, just minutes after takeoff. Police say the plane was carrying 20 people when it came plunging down in Tullahoma, Tennessee around 12:45 p.m. local time. Flight trackers showing the 58-year-old plane going in circles just before the crash. The de Havilland Canada DHC-6 Twin Otter badly damaged with the tail ripped off. Parts of the plane littered across this field just 1,000 feet from the end of the runway. Crews rushing to the scene, airlifting some of the victims to the hospital, while others were treated on site.
And Lindsay, despite what we're seeing of that wreckage, remarkably, police say no one died. The NTSB and FAA are now looking into what caused that crash. Lindsay.
Faith, thank you. Now to the severe weather threat. More than 40 million are on alert from Texas into the East Coast. The storm's turning deadly, killing at least 2 people in Georgia and Mississippi. Downed power lines and trees, leaving tens of thousands without power across the South. Let's get right to meteorologist Jeff Smith from our New York station, WABC. Jeff, can you time this out for us?
It's going to be a very volatile evening across multiple parts of the country, Lindsay. We start along the East Coast. We have a tornado watch in effect for Northern Virginia into Maryland, including the D.C. area. It could be isolated tornadoes within that zone. We've had damaging thunderstorms over the Carolinas. Those are moving offshore the Outer Banks right now. The bigger concern is what's going to be happening from southern Oklahoma into northern Texas, including Wichita Falls and Dallas. It's a level 4 out of 5 moderate risk of very large hail and destructive wind gusts. We could have 80 to 100 mile per hour winds along a vicious line of storms, maybe hail to the size of baseballs or larger. Heading into tomorrow, that severe risk will shift into the southeast, including parts that have already gotten hit during the past 24 hours. Lindsay?
Many in the thick of it again. Jeff, thank you. Overseas now to the assassination attempt on a presidential candidate in Colombia. Miguel Uribe Turbay is in critical condition and said to be fighting for his life after he was shot 3 times during a campaign rally in Bogota. The event has shaken the country with a long history of political violence, and we want to warn you some of these images may be disturbing. Here's ABC's Marcus Moore.
Tonight, authorities investigating an apparent assassination attempt in Colombia. Graphic videos posted on social media capturing the moment Colombian senator and presidential hopeful Miguel Uribe is shot multiple times during a campaign rally in Bogota on Saturday night. In Colombia. Uribe was speaking to a crowd of dozens when he was apparently targeted from behind. Bullets hitting the 39-year-old in the head and thigh, according to officials. 2 others were injured. Uribe rushed to an area hospital for emergency surgery. He has since been transferred to intensive care, according to the hospital, where his condition is considered to be, quote, of maximum severity. Authorities have arrested a 15-year-old suspect who they say was found in the area of the shooting with a 9mm Glock-type firearm. The Attorney General's office taking the lead on the investigation, calling the shooting an attack on Democratic participation ahead of next year's presidential election. Lindsay, Colombian officials vowing to get to the truth and prosecute not only the alleged shooter, but also, quote, those in charge. Lindsay.
That shooting harkening back to a darker time. Marcus, thank you. Now to politics and President Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill. The legislation is at the center of that feud between the president and Elon Musk. It narrowly passed the House, and now all eyes are focusing on the Senate. But Musk is not the only critic. Here's ABC's Alex Perchet.
Tonight, as the fallout continues between President Trump and Elon Musk over the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, the fate of Trump's signature legislation now lies in the Senate. The legislation passed by just a single vote in the House, and Republicans in the Senate, where the margin for dissent is already razor thin, are still struggling to get on the same page.
Big, beautiful bill the president has offered. I think I call it the big, not yet beautiful bill. Needs some changes.
Looming over the debate, the world's richest man, tech billionaire Elon Musk, publicly breaking with the president last week, calling the legislation a disgusting abomination that would add trillions to the national debt. Musk, who spent more than $250 million on Trump's last campaign, even suggesting that next November we fire all politicians who betray the American people. Some Democrats would welcome a Musk conversion.
I would be supportive of anybody, including Elon Musk, putting resources forward right now to let more Americans know, sound the alarm, treat this like a Paul Revere moment.
President Trump reportedly threatening that Musk would pay very serious consequences if he were to support Democrats running against Republicans who supported the legislation. And administration officials say that days after their intense public feud played out on social media, Trump still has not communicated with his former ally.
No, he hasn't, and frankly, I don't think the president intends to. The president is very much focused on delivering on his priorities for the American people, and that includes passing the One Big Beautiful Bill.
And Lindsay, tonight, another major development. At midnight, the president's latest travel ban goes into effect. This executive order puts full restrictions on 12 countries, partial restrictions on 7 others, and it's reminiscent of the 2017 Trump travel bans that impacted majority Muslim countries. And like those, this latest round is likely to face legal challenges. Lindsay.
Alex Perchet from the White House. Thank you. Now to the war in Ukraine and more of our exclusive interview with Ukrainian President Zelensky. The new details about those brazen drone attacks deep inside Russia. ABC's Chief Global Affairs anchor Martha Raddatz is in Ukraine.
Tonight, this drone's-eye view of Ukraine's remarkable attack on a fleet of Russian strategic bombers, revealing the devastating and intricate planning. And the key, inexpensive Ukrainian-made drones. And we were allowed to see exactly how they are made and where.
This is one of many drone production facilities across Ukraine, spread out across the country. We can't tell you exactly where we are because obviously these facilities are Russian targets.
We saw where the explosive unit is placed on the quadcopters and shelf after shelf of the parts. Production is expected to hit 1 million by the end of the year. Ukraine's President Zelensky telling me that these inexpensive drones wiped out some of Russia's most expensive bombers.
For Russians, more than $7 billion.
And the drones not very expensive.
Yes, not. Yeah, we use cheap drones.
Zelensky describing the planners of the secretive Operation Spiderweb as brilliant and saying with pride that no details had leaked. Even the U.S. was kept in the dark.
Does President Trump believe that Russia is winning this war, do you think?
Yes, it's not true. It's not a victory when you really spend 1 million people.
President Zelensky is urging President Trump to support stronger sanctions to put more pressure on Vladimir Putin. As for those ceasefire talks, they are scheduled to resume tomorrow, but so far no progress has been made. Lindsay?
Martha, thank you. Back here in New York, attorneys for Sean Diddy Combs are once again asking a judge to declare a mistrial in his sex trafficking racketeering case. Prosecutors are expected to respond before the trial resumes tomorrow morning. Let's bring in ABC's Ike Ejiochi. Ike, give us a sense of what prompted this request.
Yeah, Lindsay, for the second time in just over a week, Combs' legal team is asking the judge to declare a mistrial. They're accusing prosecutors of misconduct after presenting what they're calling materially false testimony, specifically claims that Combs dangled Brianna Bongolan, a friend of his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura, off a 17th floor Los Angeles balcony before slamming her into furniture in 2016. Defense attorneys say hotel receipts prove Combs was in New York at the time, calling Bongolan's account perjured testimony motivated by money. Last week, jurors heard dramatic testimony from witnesses under the pseudonyms Mia and Jane, both women attempting to paint a picture of coercion, control, and alleged sex trafficking, with Jane testifying about disturbing sexual encounters with Combs and male sex workers, where she claims she was pressured into sexual acts, often suffering bruising and infections as a result. And in courtroom drama, the judge threatening to remove Combs from the courtroom after he was seen making facial expressions and eye contact with jurors, saying he'll take actions if it happens again. Lindsay, Combs denies the allegations. The prosecution is expected to respond to the motion for a mistrial before court resumes tomorrow, when it enters its 5th week of testimony. Lindsay?
So much interest in this case, Ike. Thank you. Now to sports. In Game 2 of the NBA Finals, the Oklahoma City Thunder is looking to even up the series after losing the first game to the Indiana Pacers. Let's bring in ABC's Will Reeve in Oklahoma City for us tonight. Will, no doubt this is a significant game for both teams.
Absolutely, Lindsay. Good evening. And Game 2 just moments away here in Oklahoma City. And Game 1 was a stunner. The Oklahoma City Thunder, heavily favored. They had control of the entire game. But as the Pacers have done now 5 times in these playoffs, they come back from a 15-point deficit, led by who else? Tyrese Halliburton, hitting that shot with 0.3 of a second remaining. They go on to win. And if the Pacers can steal Game 2, the odds are in their favor, because teams that go up 2-0 in the finals go on to win the series and the title 86% of the time. Only twice in NBA history has the road team won the first 2 games in the finals. It hasn't happened in 30 years. The Thunder here still heavily favored at home with their raucous crowd behind them. But we'll find out together what's going to happen in this amazing series. Game 2 coming up on ABC at 8 Eastern, Lindsay.
Pressure is on. We'll be watching. Will, thank you. There's so much more ahead on World News Tonight this Sunday, including the frightening scene when a boat went up in flames with nearly 24 people on board. Coco Gauff's secret, what she did to convince herself she could win the French Open. A dangerous situation in New York City last night. A boat caught fire near the Bronx with nearly 24 people on board. Most suffered injuries but were able to swim ashore. One is reportedly in critical condition. Police say the boat's captain was arrested for allegedly operating the vessel while intoxicated. When we come back, an instant classic at the French Open. To the index now, and what a final today at the French Open. Defending champ Carlos Alcaraz lost the first 2 sets, but then stormed back to beat Jannik Sinner in 5 sets. The match lasted nearly 5.5 hours. Meanwhile, the women's champ Coco Gauff says self-persuasion played a big role in her victory. Gauff wrote on a piece of paper multiple times, "I will win French Open 2025. When we come back, a victim of war gets to rewrite his own story. Finally, a young man's journey from the horrors of war to a new life in a new country. Ivan Shaban never dreamed this day was possible.
Ivan Shaban!
The 18-year-old graduating from high school in San Diego, California, just 3 years after being left for dead on the side of the road in his native Ukraine.
When I got hit by the tank, at first I felt nothing, just darkness.
As he was searching for food, a Russian tank ran him over. Ivan says he thought he was going to die.
When I woke up, I couldn't feel my right foot.
Despite losing his right leg, Ivan was determined he wanted more out of life. A medical team flew him to San Diego, where he relearned how to walk. Ivan is now embracing what he calls a rebirth, a new life without a leg, but with much more opportunity. Fitted with a running prosthetic, Ivan competed on his track team.
I feel that I'm very lucky that I stayed alive, because now I'm here.
Be it land or sea, Ivan is now taking on extraordinary new challenges.
This is my surfing leg.
Hitting the waves, grateful for this second chance at life.
The worst thing that can ever happen in your life sometimes can turn out to be the best, and you never know until you move forward.
An inspiration. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Lindsay Davis. Good night.